I'm Kay Buchanan, and I'm the head librarian for education services at the University of Virginia, and I reside in the CLIC in a glass house. The place where I first came to work was called the Education Library, and when we transitioned all the books, we had a naming contest, and the one that came up, which we all liked, was CLIC, because we were going to make it click with everyone, and it's Curry Library Innovation Commons, as opposed to just a learning commons. We were going to also do something with the knowledge we were gaining and innovate. Well, we'll start back in 2008. In 2008, there were 14 libraries at the University of Virginia, and the library director met with her leadership team, and they started discussing all the changes that were happening in scholarly research, the budget. Remember, we were ready to have a catastrophic budget shortfall. There were changes in the Curry School. At that time, we were looking for a new dean, and that probably meant new curriculums, new resources that would be needed. There would be shifting and change, and we had to respond to that. So the proposal became that we would move all of the books out of the education library over into the main Alderman Library, which is our humanities and social sciences library, and that the two people who were working in public service, Carol and I, would stay here and continue to offer services that we identified that were needed. And we did that with the help of students and the library staff and Curry faculty and staff, and we came up with a list of things that we thought were essential, that if we were going to offer any kind of library services here, we would offer the following. We would still keep our children's collection, 7,000 books. Can you imagine filing 7,000 books in with the adult books? They wouldn't be a collection, they'd just be a number of books. So we kept those here, and we have a reserve service that we have here. We kept that, so the faculty can still put things on reserve. The students wanted a place where they could drop off books. When they were finished, they could just put them on a book drop, and then they're taken back to the appropriate library where they are shelved. And we also wanted to have a hold shelf where the students could pick up books that were being delivered here. And I wanted, along with Carol, we wanted to have a collection of handbooks, which are essential to graduate study here, and we kept all those. And then we moved into our offices, and we thought we need other people. And as we started establishing what we would do, we were saying we were going to still offer instruction. We would offer one-on-one consults with the students. We would develop web pages and try to use the new technology to deliver some of our content. We stumbled upon making a newsletter and distributing it every Thursday. And in there we can put those, well, we've done a lot of videos, for example, on how do you do something, how do you search in a database effectively. So we put those in the newsletter, and then we send that all to all the students. And then we invited Nancy Ketchner to join us. She's a data consultant, and she comes over and works with us one day a week. We could invite perhaps the Writing Center, our Career Center people have been up here. So it's sort of evolving that it's going to be services for students. That's a big challenge. That's probably the biggest one. If you build it, will they come? And I think when they walk in the door of a library, they go, oh, I know there's the books, there's the journals, there's a librarian, there's a computer, there's the videos. So when they walk in the door here, they look around and they go, I don't know what this is supposed to be. So of course we ran around and we made signs and said, this is what this is and this is what that is, to help with that. But on a longer view, you need to think a bit higher up than the day-to-day operations and say, well, what is it we're trying to achieve here? And while you may think you may be wearing your librarian hat and think, oh, it's all about the library. Since it's not a library, it's something else. I don't know what that something else is. It gets defined as we go along. It's very organic. And to that end, as soon as we made that transition and the books were out of here. It's a big open space. And then other people had other ideas about what should be going on in here. So some policies had to be written. But first of all, we had to even think of what could possibly be asked of us to do, and would we do that? So we then thought, well, what we needed is some anchor. We're like the mall. We have a shopping mall. We want an anchor store. Okay, and we put in a children's engineering center, and with the thought that people could come up here, the students could come up here, learn how to work, for example, a fabricator that's there that will make three-dimensional objects. And then once they learned how to do that, they could then go out into the schools and incorporate that into the schools. And then that was the anchor, we thought, and then we would have presentations. And luckily, our dean said, let's hold some seminars, bring in famous people from all over the world, and they'll meet with our students and engage them and have a great student experience. That was fantastic. And then we had breakout groups. And then someone goes, well, why don't we have lunch in here? Lunch in a library. Oh no, it's not a library anymore. So we started putting the tables together and it became lunch. And then the next week the staff at Curry said, well, why can't we have lunch up there to build community? And we went, well, why not? So they're up here having lunch. And then somebody said, well, I've always wanted to have a career fair up there and people could meet all their possible employers. And we went, well, that sounds okay. So we're playing it by ear, but basically I think it boils down, when you look in retrospect, it's really the student experience, supporting it, any kind of scholarship endeavors that we can support, we're welcome to have. One thing we hadn't thought about is people saw the computers that were in here and immediately thought, oh, I'd like to teach my class there rather than the classroom I'm in. And some people go, oh, I understand because you're in a really bad classroom. But I've come to figure it out. Every classroom is bad if you can have that one. So we couldn't possibly have everyone coming up here and teaching their class. So we've had to have many discussions along that. Where do you draw the line and say that's not really an activity for here that will further our purpose? It's going to contain some of the things that we have in our collections now. I mean, we're going to have electronic journals for quite a while, I believe. That's a very good way to disseminate knowledge. And it's the review process, peer review is not always considered the optimum, but we still haven't found anything to replace it yet. It's the best we have. I think there will still be books. Will the library own the books? How many copies of Mark Twain do we need to buy? Are those going to be so inexpensive that most people could afford them and we just buy the really expensive things? Or do we lease the really expensive things? Like the Journal Brain is $30,000 a year. I don't think we'd ask anyone to buy that. At least that's the price for an institutional subscription to that journal. I think we will start, even if we don't have it, let's say, for example, videos. Right now they're on DVD, but we've seen it come from cassettes to CDs, DVDs, and now streaming. So it is our collection, but they aren't in this library. So I can see that the library will build a streaming video collection which will serve the teaching needs, because the teachers can queue it up wherever they are, whenever they are, to play for their classes. I think we will be in charge of organizing virtual tools. I think that's the short end of what I'm trying to say. We may see web pages, organizational web pages. For example, one here, the IES, the Institute of Educational Sciences, fabulous organization, and they put up a lot of useful reports, data sets that our teachers need. At the K-12 level, there may be another organization that will start taking the lead on producing those reports. Instead of putting them in a journal, they'll be put on that page. There'll be some kind of peer review done at that organization and branded with that organization's brand to say this is reliable and valid and you too can use it, and it will meet the needs of that population. So our job as librarians will be to know of those websites and try to somehow put value added on them, organize them in such a way that they, I like the term the architects use, surface something. If you have a stream a waterbed that's underground and somehow you make it come up and you have a beautiful lake. Isn't that beautiful? And I kind of think that's what librarians are trying to do now. We have a lot of information out there coming out of that water hose, and we try to organize it and go, oh, here is good. These are good journals. These are good books. But now we're going to say, here are your videos, and we'll try to figure out a way to organize them so it has made some sense, and then we're going to help you take those videos and create your own knowledge from those videos based on your experiences, your expertise, and your research. Well, technology is redesigning the blueprint for the library as well as Learning Commons. And whereas once we had a place that was just, we would store and preserve that information, now we have to create that place so that we can create the solutions to all the problems that we're facing here in education. To that end, we need faculty to be here in the CLIC, along with students, other professionals such as our data expert, and then we will use the tools of technology to deliver that message. We can use things like, in the virtual CLIC, we can use Illuminate, we can use chat to deliver things like our electronic journals and our ebooks. And then hopefully the students and the faculty who are collaborating with the librarians will all come up with a solution that will help solve many of our education problems. I think the tools are going to allow us to have that time to discover, create, and change. Here we are very much responding to whatever the mission of the university is and whatever our president, Dr. Sullivan, says. This is what we're after. So we all fall in. The Curry School will do certain things and the library does certain things to meet those goals. And we want to provide the tools, the resources, the space, the expertise, and engage with the students to make that learning experience really the best it can be. In 2008, I took a one-week course on designing places, and we were looking at designing a library at that point, and I tried to think about that. What would I do designing a space like the CLIC? And the leader of that was, he was from Universitas 21, and he kept emphasizing it's not about the space, it's about the place. So you have to have something here that people want to come to. Before it was a library, so they came to the library because they knew what they were going to get. When they come here as a Learning Commons, we have to make it very evident what it is. But before we even get to that point, we have to ask ourselves as an institution of learning, what is it that we want to have going on in here? We have to make those choices. And then after we map out this space and go, we want these kind of activities to go on, and we want those activities to go on sound educational principles, you want to develop your space with those things in mind, but also factor in things like light. Everybody wants to sit by a window, but the glare on your screen is pretty bad. Well, then maybe you have to put up film on the windows to cut down that glare. We quickly found out, for example, the most important thing in the whole place was electrical outlets. If you don't have those, the laptops are all dying. Lighting is important, heating is important, and one that's really overlooked all the time is sound. Sound carries and you've got to in some way contain it, make it work for you. We had a really big room, for example, and we quickly realized we need to break it up into places, into spaces for this kind of activity or that kind of activity. And if we're going to put that kind of activity in, what do we need to have in that area? Is it light or no light? Is it electrical outlets? Is it carpeting? Is it chairs on wheels? Tables on wheels? So the driving engine behind that is really, what do we want to happen in the space? Not forgetting that other people will chime in what they want to go on in the space as you create a whole new vision. We haven't had these things before, so everybody can contribute to forming what this new spot will be.